My parents handed my brother $650,000 and then showed up at my rental property with suitcases, demanding I kick out my tenants so they could move in. When I said no, they called the entire family and painted me as the villain. But what they didn't expect was that I'd finally stopped playing the role they'd written for me 30 years ago. I'm Cassidy. And this is the story of how I learned that sometimes protecting your peace means letting people be angry at you. Let me start with who I was before everything fell apart. For 8 years, I've been running an interior design and custom furniture studio. Nothing fancy, just me, my workshop, and a lot of sawdust. Most days you'd find me in jeans and a work apron, hair tied back, sanding down wood while trying to build something beautiful out of raw materials. That's always been my thing. Taking something rough and making it work. Maybe that's because I spent my entire childhood being told to make things work. To understand. To be flexible. To step aside. See, I have a brother. Connor. And Connor was always the investment. The one worth spending money on. The one whose future mattered. I was just the daughter. The one who could handle things on her own. Growing up, I heard the same script over and over. Be understanding when Connor gets the new bike. Be understanding when Connor's summer camp costs more than your entire school year. Be understanding when your brother needs help with college. So I understood. I worked 3 part-time jobs at once. I ate canned beans for dinner. I stitched together a degree I paid for myself while Connor's tuition got wired straight from my parents' account the moment it was due. My mom used to say it with a smile, like she was complimenting me. Girls just don't need as much help, sweetie. You're stronger. At the time, I thought she meant it as encouragement. Now I realize she meant it literally. Less help. More burden. You can handle it. I remember one Christmas when I was 19. I'd saved up for months to come home for the holidays. Worked doubles at the campus cafeteria, skipped meals, counted every dollar for that bus ticket. When I arrived, Connor was showing off his new car. A graduation gift. Early, because he'd earned it. I'd asked for help with textbooks that semester. $200. Mom had said they were tight on money. But standing there, watching Connor get handed keys to a car that cost 20 times what I'd asked for, I felt something crack inside me. Not loudly. Just a hairline fracture that would take years to fully break. That night at dinner, Dad raised his glass. To Connor's future, he said. Everyone clinked glasses. I sat there with my water, realizing no one had ever toasted to mine. As an adult, I kept my distance. Not because I didn't love them, but because I could breathe better when I wasn't being squeezed into that role anymore. The forever understanding daughter. The one who sacrifices so everyone else can be comfortable. Then I met Graham. The first person who actually saw me. Not the version shaped by guilt and obligation, but just me. The woman who fought her way into a craft she loved. We got married. Bought a house in Highlands Ranch. Started talking about kids. I was pregnant, finally building the quiet life I'd worked years to earn. Coffee on the porch in the mornings. Late night conversations about baby names. The kind of future that felt solid. Part of that stability came from a rental property I owned in Lakewood. I'd bought it with my own savings, every dollar earned from my business. A young couple lived there. Ben and Megan. They were trying to get on their feet, just like I had years ago. They paid rent on time, kept the place clean, never caused problems. Ben reminded me of myself at that age. Working 2 jobs, trying to build something. Megan was in nursing school. They were the kind of people who didn't ask for handouts, just a fair shot. In my mind, they were the kind of tenants you bend over backward to keep. So when my parents called one afternoon, sounding excited, I had no reason to brace myself. They told me they'd sold their house. 30 years of memories. The porch swing my dad built. The kitchen my mom painted 3 times. I figured they were finally going to relax. Maybe travel. Settle into retirement. I even smiled when my mom described how fast the place sold. Then she said it. We gave the money to Connor. All $650,000. Isn't that wonderful? I pressed the phone to my ear, waiting for her to laugh, waiting for the punchline, waiting for anything that made sense. But she just kept talking, listing the amenities of the penthouse Connor had found downtown. How excited he was. How this was going to set him up for life. And then came the line that changed everything. We'll be moving into your rental for a little while. Just tell those tenants to leave. I don't remember what I said after that. Something flat and polite. The kind of autopilot response you give when your brain disconnects to protect itself. I hung up and stared at the wall of my workshop. The smell of fresh-cut oak hung in the air, sharp and grounding. My parents had just given my brother $650,000. Their entire nest egg. Without even mentioning it to me. And then, without hesitation, decided my property, my investment, would become their backup plan. No request. No conversation. Just an expectation wrapped in entitlement. I told Graham that night. He stood at the kitchen counter, hands braced on the granite, listening without interrupting. You're not actually considering evicting them, he said gently. Of course not. The answer was immediate. Instinctual. It's not even legal, I added. And it's not right, he said. I nodded. But my stomach tightened because I knew what was coming. My parents didn't handle boundaries. They bulldozed them. The calls started the next morning. Mom first. Her voice sugary and fragile. Cassidy, honey, you sounded stressed yesterday. We just need a place for a little while. Then Dad. Sterner. Your mother is upset. You should fix this. I repeated myself over and over. I can't remove tenants under a valid lease. It's illegal. It's unethical. But logic only works on people willing to hear it. By noon, Mom was crying. By evening, Dad was lecturing me about family responsibility. By the next day, relatives I hadn't heard from in months suddenly had my number memorized. Aunt Sharon called at 7 in the morning. Your parents gave everything to help Connor start his life, and you can't do one little thing? It's not little, I said. Well, you're the successful one, she snapped. You should help. That was the script. I was the capable one. The reliable one. The daughter whose comfort was negotiable because she could handle it. Connor texted me that afternoon. They need somewhere to stay. Be flexible, sis. Be flexible. As if that were the magic phrase that could erase lease laws or basic decency. I didn't respond. But the real explosion happened 3 days later. I was in my studio, sanding the edge of a maple countertop, when my phone buzzed nonstop. Ben's name lit up the screen. His voice trembled the moment I answered. Cassidy, there are people at the door saying they're moving in. They have suitcases. They're yelling. My heart dropped. Describe them. It's an older couple. They said they're your parents. Of course they did. I told him to stay inside. Not to open the door. That I was on my way. Then I grabbed my keys, dust still on my jeans, and drove across Denver with my pulse hammering. The drive felt endless. Every red light stretched into eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I kept thinking about Ben and Megan on the other side of that door, confused and scared, dealing with my family's dysfunction. When I turned onto the Lakewood street, I saw them instantly. My parents on the front porch. 2 large suitcases beside them. Grocery bags dangling from Mom's wrist like they were checking into a vacation rental. Mom was pounding on the door so hard the frame rattled. Dad stood stiffly beside her, looking like he was already rehearsing the lecture he'd give me for being difficult. I stepped out of my car. What are you doing? Mom spun around, furious and relieved all at once. They won't let us in. It's not your house, I said. It's family property, she insisted. As if saying it made it true. Dad took a step toward me. We've been in a hotel for almost 2 weeks waiting for you to handle this. You created that situation, I replied. You sold your house. You gave away your money. That doesn't make my rental your backup plan. Mom's voice cracked. switching to her well-practiced heartbreak. How can you talk to us this way after everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me. I almost laughed. The bike I never got. The summer camps I never attended. The college tuition I paid myself. The Christmas when I asked for textbook money and got told they were broke while Connor drove a new car. Ben cracked the door open just an inch. Do we need to call someone? He asked quietly. No, I said. Then I looked directly at my parents. But they will if you don't leave. The porch fell silent. The kind of sharp, vibrating silence that comes right before something breaks. And in that moment, I understood exactly what I was up against. Not confusion. Not desperation. But entitlement so deep they truly believed my life existed to cushion their choices. They left the porch that day only because Ben picked up his phone like he was about to dial. Dad muttered something about "this isn't over." Mom cried loudly enough for the neighbors to peek through blinds. Then they dragged their suitcases back to the car like two people gravely wronged. I watched them drive away with a cold, hollow ache spreading across my ribs. It wasn't guilt. It was the realization that this was only the first attempt. After they left, I went inside to check on Ben and Megan. They were sitting on their couch, holding hands, looking shaken. I'm so sorry, I said. Megan shook her head. You have nothing to apologize for. We just didn't know what to do. You did exactly right, I told them. This is your home. No one gets to take that from you. Ben looked at me with something like gratitude mixed with concern. Are you okay? I realized then that these two people, virtual strangers, had shown me more consideration in that moment than my own family had in years. By the next morning, the narrative had changed. And apparently I'd been assigned the villain role. My phone lit up before sunrise. A message from my cousin Jason. I can't believe you'd abandon your parents like this. Then another from Aunt Sharon. We heard you refused to let them stay. They're practically homeless. Homeless. That was the word they chose. Even though my parents had willingly handed their entire nest egg to Connor without a second thought. A group chat I'd been forcibly added to filled with passive-aggressive messages about family duty and honoring your elders. Not one person asked what had actually happened. Not one asked about Ben and Megan or the legal lease. This wasn't concern. It was a coordinated guilt campaign. Graham watched me read message after message while I sat at the kitchen island, one hand on my belly. You can block them, he murmured. I know, I said. And I did know. But blocking them didn't solve the larger truth. My parents believed they had unrestricted access to my life, my home, my resources. If I didn't stop it cleanly now, it would bleed into every part of the future we were trying to build. Around that time, news about Connor started trickling in. Through my cousin Elena, one of the few neutral voices, I learned that the bank had denied Connor's mortgage application on the penthouse. They needed verification of income. He didn't have any. Without the loan, he couldn't close. Without closing, the deposit, my parents' $650,000, wasn't coming back. Suddenly, their urgency made sense. They'd thrown everything into Connor's dream and now had nowhere to land. Elena told me more over coffee one afternoon. Apparently Connor had quit his job months ago, planning to day trade full-time once he moved into the penthouse. He'd been telling everyone he was about to make it big. My parents had believed every word. They're panicking, Elena said quietly. But that doesn't make what they're doing to you right. 2 days later, Connor himself called. Look, he said, sounding annoyed rather than embarrassed. Things are tight right now. Paige and I still need to pay the venue. It's only $18,000. Can you help? Only $18,000. As if I kept stacks of cash in the pantry for moments like this. I didn't even hesitate. No, his silence wasn't surprise. It was offense. Wow, he said. Real supportive, sis. Supportive. Another word twisted into a weapon. Connor, I said, keeping my voice steady. Mom and Dad gave you $650,000. That's more money than I've made in my entire life. And you're calling me unsupportive because I won't give you another $18,000? That money was a gift, he snapped. It's not the same thing. You're right, I said. It's not. Because I actually earned what I have. He hung up on me. That night, after one more round of messages from relatives insisting I step up, something inside me locked into place. I opened my laptop and began writing an email. Not emotional. Not defensive. Just factual. A timeline of events. Screenshots of the lease. Records of the sale. Every detail in clear, undeniable language. At the end, I added one line: if anyone believes my parents deserve housing more than my tenants do, please let me know when they can move in with you. Then I hit send to 30 people. By the next morning, the group chat was silent. The silence lasted almost a full day. Long enough for me to hope briefly that the worst had passed. But entitlement doesn't disappear. It waits, reshapes itself, and returns wearing a softer mask. It was a Saturday morning in early spring. Graham and I were in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the counters while we argued playfully about baby names. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders felt loose. My phone wasn't buzzing. My parents hadn't called. Even Connor had gone quiet. Peace felt foreign, but warm. Then the doorbell chimed. Not once. Repeatedly. Insistently. Graham checked the driveway. His voice dropped. Cassidy, it's them. I opened the Ring app. And there they were. My parents on the porch, dressed nicely, as if they were arriving for a holiday dinner rather than ambushing the daughter they'd been attacking for weeks. Mom held a bouquet of flowers. Dad carried a grocery bag. Mom leaned toward the camera, smiling in a way that felt more like performance than apology. Sweetheart, we brought the ingredients for your favorite beef stew. Let us in. Graham looked at me. This is manipulation. I knew. I felt it in the tightening of my chest. The way her voice tugged at an old instinct to soothe. To give in. To make things easier. That was the role I'd played my entire childhood. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Dad cleared his throat, speaking directly to the camera. We've had time to reflect. We made mistakes. Let's just talk like adults. Talk like adults. A phrase he'd used every time he wanted control disguised as reason. I stayed where I was, leaning against the hallway wall, phone still in hand. I didn't open the door. Mom kept going, her voice trembling. Please, honey. We've been staying somewhere awful. We're tired. We miss you. Graham whispered, they're not here to apologize. They're here to gain access. He was right. Every "we're sorry" was vague, conditional, and conveniently paired with a request for me to do the very thing I'd already told them I wouldn't. When I didn't respond, Dad's tone shifted instantly. The performance cracked. Cassidy, this is childish. Open the door. Mom echoed him, louder. We are your parents. We deserve respect. Respect. They used the word like a blade. When neither of us moved, Dad stepped back and crossed his arms. If you don't let us in, we'll stay here until you do. You can't ignore us forever. My pulse thudded steadily. Not panicked. Just clear. This was it. The final escalation. They wanted a scene. A crack. Any sign I could be guilted back into compliance. Instead, I opened the phone app and dialed the non-emergency police line. The operator answered. I exhaled. I need to report ongoing trespassing. Same individuals as a previous incident at my rental property. Graham watched me with quiet pride. I watched myself too, like someone finally stepping into the life she wanted. Outside, my parents kept talking, unaware I'd just made the call that would redefine our relationship. Think about the baby, Mom pleaded suddenly, as if the mention of my pregnancy might soften me. Don't you want us involved? Not like this, I thought. Not with ownership instead of love. Dad knocked again. Harder this time. Cassidy, stop being dramatic. It was almost laughable. Coming from the people staging a doorstep intervention with flowers and guilt. When the police car turned onto our street, their heads snapped toward it. Mom's face crumpled instantly. Dad's jaw clenched. They both stepped back, uncertain for the first time. The officer approached calmly. "Ma'am, sir, the homeowner has requested you leave the property." Mom pointed toward the door. "We're her parents." "She's confused." "She's not," Graham said from behind me. The officer nodded at them. "You need to leave now. You've been asked before." Dad looked directly at the camera, eyes hard. "You'll regret this, Cassidy." But regret was never on the table. Relief was. They left slowly, dramatically, like actors hoping the audience would feel sorry for them. The car door slammed. The engine turned over, and they drove away without another word. When the officer left, Graham wrapped his arms around me. I didn't cry. Instead, something inside me unlocked. Quietly, decisively. A breath I'd been holding for years finally left my body. But the day wasn't done. That evening, my phone buzzed again. "Connor." I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "What did you do?" he barked. "Mom is hysterical. Dad's furious." "I protected my home," I said. "You humiliated them." "They created the situation," I replied. "I enforced a boundary." He scoffed. "Unbelievable. They gave me everything to build my future, and you can't even give them a place to stay." There it was. The hierarchy laid bare. "They gave you everything," I said softly. "Not me." A long silence stretched between us. "You know what your problem is?" Connor said finally. "You've always been jealous. You can't stand that they believed in me more than you." The words should have hurt. Maybe once they would have. But sitting there, pregnant with my child, in the home I'd bought with money I'd earned, married to a man who actually valued me, I felt nothing but pity. "I'm not jealous, Connor," I said. "I'm just done being the backup plan for everyone else's bad decisions." "Then you're going to pay for this," he hissed. I hung up. But the real ending wasn't a call or confrontation. It came 2 days later in a plain envelope delivered to my parents' new apartment, the one-bedroom they'd finally rented when all their options fell apart. A formal notice drafted by my attorney. Cease trespassing or face further legal action. Any additional attempts to enter my properties would be documented and submitted. According to Elena, my parents went pale reading it. Not angry. Not devastated. Reeling. It was the first time in their lives someone had drawn a line they couldn't cross. In the weeks that followed, the noise around me finally quieted. My parents moved into a modest one-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing like the life they'd imagined when they handed Connor $650,000. But it was the only place they could afford. The calls from relatives faded too. Once they realized the version of the story they'd been fed didn't hold up against lease agreements and police reports. Entitlement is loud at first, but it dies quickly when no one feeds it. Ben and Megan stayed in the Lakewood house, grateful and steady. They sent me updates about the garden they'd planted in the backyard. Their kindness felt like the universe reminding me I'd chosen the right people to protect. A few months later, Megan texted me a photo. They'd painted the nursery in their second bedroom. She was pregnant too, due a month after me. "Thank you for giving us a stable home to bring our baby into," she wrote. I cried reading that. Not sad tears, grateful ones. At home, quiet returned. Real quiet. The kind that settles into the walls and stays. Graham and I finished our nursery, brushing soft green paint onto the walls while sunlight drifted through the window. Every stroke felt like reclaiming something. Space. Safety. A future unmarred by manipulation. For the first time in my life, my boundaries weren't questioned or punished. They simply existed. And the life on the other side of them was peaceful. Looking back, people assume the hardest part was calling the police on my own parents. It wasn't. The hardest part was realizing how long I'd lived smaller than I needed to. Shrinking myself to keep the peace. accepting scraps of respect because I was told daughters should be understanding. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. And the day I stopped surrendering, my life finally opened. My daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in June. We named her Alice. When I held her for the first time, I made her a promise. She would never be told to be understanding while her brother got everything. She would never have to earn love by being convenient. My parents sent a card. No apology. Just congratulations and a note that they hoped to meet her soon. I didn't respond. Maybe one day there will be room for reconciliation. But it will be on my terms. With boundaries they respect. With acknowledgement of what they did. Until then, I have everything I need. A husband who sees me, friends who value me, tenants who appreciate me, and a daughter who will grow up knowing her worth isn't negotiable. My parents may never understand the line I drew, but that line is why my child will grow up in a home shaped by love, not obligation. That's the legacy I choose. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and setting boundaries that protect your peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say no to the people who taught you to always say yes.